Have you ever fallen back into the habit of masturbating and watching porn after your mother has died? Now, upon hearing that, your face has probably changed. You probably might be feeling kind of weird, like, what's wrong with you? Me masturbating after my mother has died, what are you talking about here? What is this? What I'm trying to say is, as a result of trauma, people fall into such habits. The weird thing about human beings is when we had a bad habit and then we quit that bad habit, but then something traumatic happens, some difficult life event happens, we fall back into that bad habit for some reason. Why is that? It's a result of that trauma. It's to alleviate ourselves from the trauma. That is another reason you watch porn and masturbate. You have trauma, you have pain, you're feeling internal pain, and you try to solve it in the one way you know how, the one way you think you know how, which is via porn and masturbation. The thing with human beings is we don't just do things for no reason. We don't just do things out of instinct. We're not just random like that. We do things for a specific reason. You might think that human beings, people do things for nothing. No. Human beings do things for a reason. You might not know the reasons, but the reasons are there. One of them is to solve that pain, that trauma. So sometimes masturbate, no, it's not even sometimes, but masturbation to porn, the porn itself is not really the only problem, but your internal pain is. Your pain, your emotions, they are the problem. So you try to alleviate them in the only way you know how, which is through bad habits such as porn and masturbation. Let me even give some examples. And it's not exactly porn and masturbation, but it's a similar sort of thing. It is people who quit their bad habits and then they fall right back into those bad habits. Let me give examples. For example, I'm going to give an example of two colleagues. And if these two colleagues of mine happen to be watching this, and former colleagues rather, I don't mean to actually expose you. I'm just using this as an example. And furthermore, chances are that people who are watching these videos, who are watching my content, don't really know who you are. So you're gonna be fine in this situation. One of my colleagues, she used to smoke a lot. She used to be a chain smoker. Both of them were chain smokers, but one of them, I'm talking about one of them in this moment. She used to be a chain smoker, smoking regularly. But then one day she decided she had enough. She quit smoking for good. And she was married as well. She was married and she quit smoking. But then, unfortunately for this colleague, her husband died in a traumatic way, rather traumatic and even unexpected way. Imagine this. You're having a normal day with your husband, okay? Your day is just normal. You come home from work or whatever it is that you came from. You have a chat with your husband. You be intimate. You have intimate relations with your husband. You go to sleep. And then you wake up next morning and your husband looks like he's asleep, but for some reason he's not really waking up. You think, oh, yes, he's still asleep. And then you realize his eyes have been closed for a while now. What's actually going on with him? So then you tap him, you try to wake him up and he's just not responding. You're like, oh my God, what's going on here? You shake him, you try to wake him up, you're screaming for him to wake up. You feel his blood pressure and then your heart, you feel his blood pressure, not blood pressure, you feel his pulse and then there's nothing there and then your heart just sinks, your heart just breaks. And then you realize that your husband is dead. That is what my colleague witnessed. Her husband died. She woke up to a dead husband. Imagine that. Imagine such an unexpected event. You don't really expect that. Usually, when your spouse dies, you kind of expect it. He's been sick for a while. He's been having cancer. And as a result of the cancer, he died. He or she died. Or he has diabetes or whatever. Or another health illness. And as a result of that health illness, he died. But this is unexpected. He was perfectly fine the day before. But then suddenly you wake up next to him and he's just dead. He's not even alive. Imagine such a traumatic event. And she explains that as a result of that, she went back to smoking. What do you think that was? It was a coping mechanism. It was to alleviate herself, to de-stress from the pain, which is via smoking. Even though that habit doesn't actually cure you. It doesn't actually cure anything. It just provides temporary relief while you're releasing all these chemicals in your brain, these feel-good chemicals in your brain. But the pain is still there. I'll give an example of another colleague. One of my colleagues, this colleague of mine, she was very, very close with her auntie. She was closer with her auntie than she was with her actual parents. She loved her auntie so much. Her auntie even gifted her car. Her auntie gifted this colleague of mine her car. As a present, her auntie gave her. Why am I over explaining it? I'm sure you understand. I don't know why I'm over explaining it. Her auntie gifted this colleague of mine her car. And her auntie passed away. Her auntie died. And she says as a result of that, she went back to smoking. She went back to becoming a chain smoker. That is what traumatic events do to you. They make you fall back into bad habits. They make you fall back into sinning, into doing habits that are not only sins, but the habits that you think are gonna relieve you of that pain and trauma. But they actually don't. They actually don't do anything. They're just, maybe they provide some temporary pressure via releasing all these chemicals like dopamine and so on and so forth in the brain. But the pain is still there. Your brain thinks you think you're being cured when you release these chemicals in your brain. But they're just escapism. You're just trying to escape from that pain. You're just trying to escape from that internal pain, from that internal trauma. But the trauma still remains. You know this. You know that when you know that you're feeling pain, you're feeling anxious or guilty, or you're just feeling bad, you're just feeling emotionally off. And then you try to escape via porn and masturbation. You know what happened. You feel that temporary pleasure, but that pain is still there. And for the record, these colleagues of mine, from what I remember, they still are trying to quit smoking. From what I know, they realized that, okay, I fell into this trauma back into this habit because of what happened in my past. Now I'm trying to end all of that. Now, from what I remember, these colleagues of mine, they now made an effort to quit smoking. I actually saw them. I actually witnessed them trying to stop smoking, trying to get rid of this bad habit. I don't know where they're at now. I hope at this point they've actually quit the habit of smoking. But yeah, that was the end of the story. That is what I remember from these former colleagues of mine. You fall into these habits because of the internal pain that you have. And the thing is that when you masturbate to porn regularly, you don't even realize this. You don't actually realize that you have trauma inside, because that's what porn and masturbation does. It gives you escapism. You actually escape from the pain. You actually escape from the trauma. So you actually don't really end up recognizing why it is that you end up falling into this habit. You end up not knowing why it is that you're feeling pain. Why it is that you're feeling anxious and nervous and uncomfortable, and why you're feeling so depressed and miserable and anxious. Because you're escaping. You're just trying to run away from that trauma. But that trauma just comes back. What do you do in this scenario? Number one, like I always say, even relates in this situation as well. You call onto Allah for help. You actually ask Allah to help you, to cure you from this trauma, from this pain. You ask for Allah's help. You have to remember that Allah is the one who makes things happen. The only way that things actually take place is by the will of Allah. The only way you're even watching this video is by the will of Allah. Allah is even the one who allowed you to watch this video. It was through Allah's will that you were able to even find this video. So you need to ask the one who can make things happen. You keep relying on Him. You keep making dua to Him. You keep asking Him to give you ways of curing this trauma. Islam even says that you even seek professional help. In Islam, there is such a thing as seeking professional help. You don't just wallow in self-pity and then not put an effort. No. Tie your camel and trust in Allah as well. Not only do you, of course, rely on Allah. That is important. That is the most important. But you have to put in an effort as well. That is the whole concept of tying your camel. The story of this comes back. This is from a story of something that happened in the era of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him. In his era, there was a Sahaba who, I forgot what it was, but he was going to do something. He was going to do something else. He was away from his camel for some reason. For some reason, he had to be away from his camel. And he says, and they know he doesn't want his camera to be stolen or taken away, or for his camera to just be gone, because back in the day your camera was really important. Back in the day, if you don't have a camera, you're kind of screwed. They're living in the desert, and if you don't have a camera in that era, you're kind of screwed. So he was saying, you know what, I'm gonna leave my camera out. I trust in Allah that nothing will happen with this camera. I'm gonna be away from my camera, but I trust that nothing will happen, nothing bad will happen to this camera. Prophet Muhammad was saying to this Sahaba, yeah, good thing, but make sure you tie that camera as well. You're gonna be away from that camera, but make sure you tie that camera as well. Make sure you do your part in keeping that camel from going away, from escaping, from that camel being missing, from that camel going missing or stolen or whatever. So the Sahaba tied his camel and trusted in Allah as well. You need to do something similar. You actually need to put in an effort to seeking help on curing your mental health, on curing that trauma. The next thing is to actually use that trauma to actually advance as a person. That actually might seem kind of unique, kind of weird to you. You've probably never heard this, but yeah, you can actually use the trauma. You can actually use your internal pain, your internal struggle to improve on yourself, to actually advance and become better as a human being. People like Far From Weak have spoken about this. I've spoken about the concept, the idea of using your trauma to actually advance, to actually improve on yourself and to become better. People like Dax Blade and Mahdi Tijani, they have spoken about using your trauma for good as well. I'm even going to give examples of these people. For example, Mahdi Tijani, his trauma was the fact that his marriage ended. He went for polygyny, but his first wife didn't really accept that. His first wife wasn't really on it. So she divorced him, which, okay, fair enough. But not only did she divorce him, but she decides to take his kids away from him as well. In order to make Mahdi feel pain and trauma, she decides to take the kids away from him. She was saying that you made me feel pain through doing polygyny, so I'm going to make you feel even more pain by taking your kids away from him. That is what she decides to do. And Mahdi has spoken about, Mahdi makes it clear how traumatic and how painful it is for him. He doesn't speak about it constantly, but you can tell that he is in pain. You can tell that this is not easy for him. He even says, well, every time I speak about this, it just drains me. And he speaks about how he uses that pain, how he uses that trauma to actually advance as a man, to actually become a better man, to become the man he is right now. To do the things that he does, which is actually motivating men not only become better men, but to motivate men to become better men for their future wives. He uses that trauma, he uses that pain to do his life purpose, do his mission, which was to protect the ummah, to protect the private parts of his ummah. He says that my goal is to protect the private parts of my ummah. By that he means to stop people from committing zina, which actually causes problems within the ummah and society. To stop people from committing zina and adultery, and to stop Muslims from of course releasing their lust in the haram way. That is what Mahdi prevents. And he also helps men to get married, to become the men that they need to be to get married. That is what Mahdi does. That is what Mahdi puts his trauma into. He says that trauma, that pain, is like nuclear energy. It is literally like nuclear energy. You can use it to destroy a city, which will basically be you falling back into bad habits like porn and masturbation. Or you could use it to power a city, which is using that trauma to become something of significance. I actually have a full-on course that actually teaches you about how your mental health, how your psychology actually makes you want to masturbate, actually makes you fall into masturbation. It is actually that detailed. There's a psychological realm for your porn and masturbation habits. I actually speak about it in this course in full-on detail. Imagine if Mahdi Tijani, for example, imagine if he just fell into, if he just went inwards, if he just didn't decide to express that trauma or that pain in the halal way. Not halal way. What am I talking about? If he didn't decide to express that lust and that pain he had, if he decided to obliterate the city, what kind of a person would he be? He would just be a sinner at the end of the day. He would be committing sins at the end of the day. Another example would be someone like Jack Spade. Jack Spade, he spoke about how when he was a child, he used to be bullied. He used to be beaten up every single day for being a pudgy, overweight kid who loved anime and who loved cartoons. He used to go to school expressing his love for anime and cartoons, and as a result of that, people would beat him up for being overweight and for being an anime fan. And he explained how traumatic it is, how painful it was for him. And he also speaks about how he used that pain and trauma to actually become the man that he is today. Look at the man's physique. He is so in shape. He is in shape. He is muscular. He explains about how when he was in the gym, he was using those clothes when he was getting bullied. He was using that to actually push through those weight, actually push through iron. He was using that pain, that trauma to become in shape, to become the man that he is today. Now he's even teaching other people how to become in shape like he is, or even better than he is, even better shape than he is. Imagine if he just wasted away, if he just used that trauma and to do bad habits constantly. Imagine if he uses trauma to do that. He would not have helped the people that he helped. We would not know Jack Spade as he is right now. We would not know him as that influencer who teaches people how to be in shape, who motivates people to be in shape, who actually teaches people how to be in shape. We would not know Jack Spade. He would not actually be able to help people if he just used that trauma and fell back into bad habits. Another example, even what's his name? Far From Weak actually brought up this example about how Alex Pereira actually used trauma to get into the UFC and beat his rival who was actually egging him on, actually trying to twist that trauma, actually bringing up that trauma, saying, oh yeah, Alex Pereira, he's just gonna be an average bum he's just gonna be an alcoholic, he's gonna be a drink, he's gonna be a drunkard, and he's just gonna be a nobody. So yeah, I don't really care. Screw Alex Pereira. He didn't say it exactly like that, but he said something along those lines. And Alex Pereira, he listened to these words. What would people really tell you? They'll just tell you, ignore it, bro. Just ignore it. Yeah, just ignore it. Yeah, you ignore it, and then you end up falling into bad habits anyway. He could have just fallen back into this bad habit, thinking that, oh no, I'm not even in the UFC right now. My rival is now in the UFC. The one who I beat before, my rival, he's now in the UFC. He's now doing better than I. And I was an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drunkard. So he could have fallen back into those bad habits. He could have seen his rival making fun of him, exposing his alcohol addiction. He could have just fallen back into bad habits. He could have just ignored the pain. Not really ignore the pain, but use the trauma for bad. But that's not what he did. He says, okay. Then he joins the UFC. He actually destroys everybody in the UFC. He beats people up left, right, and center in the UFC. And then he does the same thing to Israel Adesanya as well. He destroys Israel Adesanya as well by using that trauma. You need to do something similar. You need to use that internal pain. You need to recognize that you have that pain, that you have that trauma. You need to recognize it and then push it into something of significance. Remember the pain you had. The pain you had, whatever pain that it might be. Use that pain, use that trauma to actually advance as a man. Let me use myself and look at things like Super Saiyan 2, the Super Saiyans in general. Yeah, no, okay, yeah. Again, Dragon Ball Z is a Shirk-like show. It's Saram show. I'm just using the example of Super Saiyan 2. I'm not trying to glorify Dragon Ball Z, but I'm just using this as an example. And chances are you'll probably watch Dragon Ball Z as well. So yeah, here we go. The concept of the Super Saiyan. They are powered by negative emotions. They are powered every time they transform. They witness a traumatic event. Let's use Son Goku for example. The main villain of the show, Frieza, killed his best friend in front of him. He killed Krillin right in front of his face, and that villain who killed Krillin wanted to kill his son as well. And that trauma of seeing his own best friend being murdered right in front of his face, and then that villain wanting to kill his son as well. That trauma, that pain, he just used that trauma and pain to release and become more powerful. He used that trauma to become stronger. Let's use Future Trunks as well. The androids yeah, this is how it makes me talk about Dragon Ball Z. The androids, yeah, the androids killed his mentor, his best friend, his mentor, his older brother figure, Son Gohan. The androids, they killed him. And he saw his friend dead. He was in the rain, in the cold, in the rain alone. He saw his best friends, his mentor, his big brother. He saw his lifeless body there. And he tried to wake him up, and his Gohan was just dead. He was not alive anymore. And that trauma, that pain, made him rage. It made him become. He used that trauma, he used that rage to transform, to advance, to become a Super Saiyan. Your trauma is like that. Your trauma is similar to the Super Saiyan transformation. So you need to use that pain and trauma to become someone of significance. Of course, go and seek professional help. Of course, the most important one, ask Allah for help. Ask Allah to help you through this trauma, through this traumatic event. And another thing, if you're actually going through a traumatic event, I want to say that may Allah actually help you through that traumatic event. May Allah actually make it easy for you if you're going through a traumatic event. You need to use that trauma to benefit you. You can actually use trauma for good, for the use of something beneficial. And I hope that was beneficial to you. Assalamu alaikum and take care.